Good evening and welcome to the council budget meeting for Wednesday, November the 23rd, 2022. Call the meeting to order, and I'll ask that we all rise for the playing of the national anthem and a moment of silence.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Carton bras et porter le pays, il sait porter la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
All right, please be seated. And I will look to Councillor Lindell to read the land acknowledgement.
The land on which Council meets today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Acknowledging this is a reminder that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendships of Indigenous people.
Yep, I'll figure it out. Thank you, Councillor Lindell. Moving on to item 2, the adoption of the agenda. The following amendment has been made to the agenda. Item 8.2, 2023 capital budget 4-year forecast and asset management status. The recommendation in the report is being amended to schedule the public meeting to discuss the 2023 capital budget 4-year forecast and asset management status at the council meeting of December 12th, 2022. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda? Councillor Phillips, seconded by Councillor Stevens. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That is carried. Item number 3 is the adoption of the minutes. The motion is the council adopt the minutes of the meeting of council held on November 16th, 2022. Can I get a mover? Councillor Lindell, seconded by Councillor McPherson. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest this evening? Just doing a scan. Just doing a scan of the room, not seeing anybody. We'll move on. Item 5 is the motion for consent reports, but there are none. 6 is the consent reports, there are none. 7 is presentations, there are none. There's no chair's report on here tonight. So I'm going to give a chair's report anyways, just because I can. And the chair's report is pretty straightforward this evening. Just a reminder, all members of council would have received an email with respect to the budget workshops that are upcoming from the 29th until the 5th. My hope is that all members of council will attend one of those workshops. Because of the rules around quorum, we're trying to avoid having large groups. If you are not able to attend any of those times, please reach out to Ms. Douglas to arrange a separate time for a workshop. This is an opportunity this year for councillors to get a lot of questions answered before before we get too deep into the process and maybe have better clarification around amendments they may want to offer up for the operating budget. Additionally, and this should be noted, if you have questions after tonight with respect to the capital budget process, you can obviously email those questions into staff, but you can bring those questions to the workshop dates as well. I'm looking to Ms. Douglas. She's nodding. That's good. I'm sure we had talked about that, but please don't hesitate to bring those questions to staff as early in the process as you have them. This works a lot better if everybody is comfortable with the information as it's coming forward. We will also be running drop-in sessions for council after the budget has been tabled, the operating budget. So please take advantage of those. These are new ideas that we are trying this year that have had success in other municipalities, and I think in terms of best practices, these are on the list. So again, please take advantage of that, and I will refer everybody back to that email from Ms. Douglas last night. The last thing I will point out, and I'm going to, as I say this, look to Ms. Douglas, if the general public has questions, comments, concerns, anything to add to the budget process this year, obviously the process is a little bit different. The email address is still budget@stcatharines.ca. So I would strongly encourage residents in the community to reach out to their ward councillors as well as the budget committee as a whole, budget@stcatharines.ca, to pass on that information. With that, we will move on to item number 8, which is the discussion reports. 8.1 is the Chief Administrative Officer. And I'll call on Dave Oakes, the CAO, to present the pre-budget information, the forecasted 2023 operating pressures and opportunities. Mr. Oakes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you had mentioned, we're trying and we continue to innovate the budget process every year and try to improve both how we develop the operating budget, but also how council is providing input into the process. So this year, with the new council, we saw an opportunity to present a pre-budget submission, so to speak, which is really the report that's in front of you tonight. And I have a bit of an overview of some of the pressures and opportunities that staff have identified in the development of the operating budget, but also opportunities for us looking forward into 23 and beyond. So in preparation of the 23 operating budget, this presentation specifically discusses the fiscal challenges, pressures, and opportunities that face the city in 2023 and beyond. These pressures primarily relate to staff's ability to continue to deliver existing services based on a variety of external factors. Left unaddressed, these pressures will significantly challenge the organization's ability to deliver these services at our current levels. At the same time, staff have identified opportunities to move toward financial sustainability and think differently about our existing financial management practices and processes. In terms of just some overview of the pressures that we're facing in 23 and beyond, and again, these are pressures that we've been facing over several years, but recent provincial legislation and regulations have impacts on the operating budget, ranging from a need for additional staffing to the potential reduction in revenues, as well as some decrease in our OMPF funding from the province. In line with nationwide economic inflation, we're experiencing increasing costs for contracted services, fuel, materials, and other which have incremental impacts, and when combined, create significant pressures on the operating budget. In addition to these pressures, we're also seeing an increase in our licensing fees across the board in various software programs that we rely on, and this trend is continuing in 23 and will continue beyond that. In the position of our senior leadership team, it's our position that the investments that have been identified as part of the health and safety pressures are essential for us to be able to continue our existing service delivery. Any deferral of these investments would have significant legislative risk and morale implications on our staff, related specifically to those who are dealing with our outdoor opioid homelessness and mental health crisis. We have some significant implications that need to be addressed with our staffing moving forward, and that's been incorporated in some of the pressures. There are items that have been deferred prior to the onset of COVID-19, and the city has been unable to revisit these over the past several years. Time-limited measures that were employed during the pandemic to provide relief to taxpayers as increased reliance on reserves and reduced operating contributions to the capital program. These measures are not sustainable over time, and we've introduced a mechanism to start getting us back into a sustainable financial position. So these, again, factor into the associated pressures. And finally, COVID-19 pandemic has had significant negative impacts on our financial sustainability in the parking system, mainly due to decreased demand over several years, which we have to address moving forward in the parking system. On the flip side, from opportunities, staff have identified opportunities to help mitigate 2023 and longer term budget implications. And this is what I talk about when we're looking at a lot of the opportunities that we're identifying are really to set the stage for us, not only in 23, but also 24, 5, 6, and beyond to establish a fiscal program and a financial platform that really allows us to be able to provide all of the services that residents and businesses expect. Throughout the past several years, Council has approved several initiatives with an aim to increase our revenue, thus reducing and decreasing the pressures placed on the tax levy. Examples include development charge bylaw and the community benefits charge bylaw coming into effect in 22, the introduction of the municipal accommodation tax in 2023, as well as a comprehensive fee review to better align planning and building fees to the actual administrative costs that are related to that process. Our current interest rate environment has increased our investment income in 22, and the trend in 23 is looking to be similar. The transition to regional transit also provides an opportunity for us to be able to address some of the pressures while also providing a path forward to manage our city's financial sustainability in future years. We're moving towards enhanced financial sustainability through reduced reliance on reserves. This strategy is really a 24 and beyond program that really will assist us to be able to move to a long-term objective for improved financial independence. And then finally, some collaborations that our senior leadership team with the budget office has identified and monitored under the current year's program, the ability to move some projects in advance based on our cost savings and mitigation measures that we were able to do in 2022. So we're able to do a few projects in 22 that we would have essentially been putting forward in 2023. Sorry, Sarah, I missed a couple points. The reduction of capital out of revenue percentage in 21 and 22 budget years provided the financial assistance that was required during COVID-19 to both the residents, but also the financial position of the municipality. However, the reduction is not sustainable as noted in our asset management plan from the 10% down to 5% capital out of revenue. So we do have a plan to get us back to what our asset management plan and financial management plan has at a 10% capital out of revenue contribution. Addressing all of these pressures and opportunities in the development of the 23 operating budget is intended to benefit residents in future years by ensuring the city is prepared to manage and proactively support longer-term council and community objectives. So these are really the identified factors that are being incorporated into the development of the 23 operating budget. Now, having said all of that, while the pressures that we are facing are real, we've also been able to accomplish a lot and invest and expand services and programs in our community. We are continuing to find creative ways to give residents more community service hours and opportunities. Examples are the Community Rink program, which has seen a real increase in the number of community organizations that are able to, through partnership and support from our CRCS department, to create outdoor ice rinks, which are giving the community free access to outdoor ice recreation. Another example is the St. Catharines Labyrinth in Fairview Park. And more significantly, I think it's the Canada Games Park, which actually the investment that we've been able to make through the partnership with Brock University, Niagara Region, the province, the feds, and the city of Thorold really allows and increases the amount of time for the community St. Catharines residents to be able to use not only ice, but gym space that we didn't have prior to. indoor and outdoor recreational space from the walking track to the running track. These are all new investments that have been made that create real opportunities for the residents, which is an example of how we're trying to think a bit more innovative on how do we create more opportunities for the community without having to take on that full responsibility. Other examples, we have accessible playground installs at Montebello Park and Happy Rolf's in 21 and 22. The Fallen Firefighters Memorial and the Next Generation 911 communication system are examples of partnerships and looking at ways to be a bit more innovative in how we deliver our programming through sponsorship, fundraising, or looking at opportunities that present themselves for grants and partnerships. The Port Dalhousie Piers in July of 22 were officially transferred to the municipality. The OPG land use agreement that we were able to establish in the summer of 22 really gives us that opportunity to make some investments both within the trail system, but also having the staffing required to be able to maintain those over the year. And with the license agreement, that really allows us to do so. We've been able to have a seamless shift to electronic and hybrid council meetings, and we've increased our overall online services from e-billing portal, taxes and water, bookings of appointments, reporting an issue, and other website improvements that we've been able to provide. And finally, the two systems that don't necessarily get a lot of public play, but will once they're implemented, is our back of house internal financial system, the ERP, PeopleSoft, which is a partnership we're undertaking with the region, but also our tax system replacement, which is coming online, I believe, this month, Central Square. So all of these investments are really intended to help build the user experience for both residents, businesses, and staff. So as we continue to expand and look at different programming, you know, our staff has been, you know, COVID, the one real impact that COVID's had on what we do and how we deliver services is it's really allowed our staff to showcase their creativity and the ability to actually find new ways to give programming to the residents in a way that doesn't necessarily have any additional cost, but it actually has huge benefits to those using those services. As an example, we have many virtual programs that started. Seniors Without Walls programs has allowed many of our older adults who might have mobility issues or need to be cautious of their health be able to participate in programming from the comfort of their own home. And I think the number, Eric, has been, since we started that, our actual memberships in the older adult facilities are up over 225 members. And that's just an example of we don't always have to do traditional services or provide traditional types of experiences for people to enjoy the services that our staff have to offer. So, and another example is our Love STC website, which really is intended to support our local businesses and tourism through different mechanisms and digital platforms to get their products and their businesses known to the broader public. When we talk about investment in our staff resources and both training, it ultimately means better services for our residents, supporting whether it's supporting building and development, protecting and replacing infrastructure that provides clean drinking water, to proving proper equipment for service and ensuring the safety of our staff on the job. You know, we in a lot of the areas that we've been looking to increase our staff training and staff complement is because of demand, and it's the need to have the staff to actually deal and manage with the increased demand, in particular in the planning and building side. We're seeing unprecedented demands and needs for more staff to be able to help move through that process. This is an opportunity both to deal with some of the pressures of the legislation, but more importantly, it's really to manage the process when we're working with the development community to actually meet the housing objectives that are being set out by the province, but also the expectations that the building community have for us. So when we talk about needing more staff in planning and building or anywhere in the corporation for that matter is actually a very positive thing, because it means we are seeing increased demand. We are seeing a need to, and we've identified a need to provide more service. or we have noted a identified health and safety risk that is either on our staff or is part through legislation. So all of these elements of looking at improving our staff complement, adding training is really intended to be able to help align our services as well as the safety of our employees. The impact of COVID-19 pandemic and its effect on the city's resiliency and sustainability continue to present and will continue to present challenges. The financial recovery plan will take several years for the city to fully recover. At the same time, new and emerging pressures, as outlined, are challenging this recovery path. City staff are taking innovative steps in identifying risks and seeking opportunities during the budget development process, in balancing the city's responsibility to the taxpayers as well as our economic interests. And the last slide really speaks to what Mayor Cisco had talked about. This, the way we are looking to present the operating budget is different. So it essentially starts tonight with the overview of the pressures and opportunities in the report. Over the next several weeks, the email that was sent by Finance, by Christine yesterday, is really an opportunity to have smaller working groups for council to ask the detailed questions on the pressures and opportunities, and really also tell us what you heard when you were canvassing, and that will help us define the development of the draft operating budget, which is intended to be tabled at the December 12th meeting. So from now until early December, we're really looking for that opportunity to have the conversation with council. And then from December 12th, once the budget has been tabled, that really provides the next month for council and the public to ask questions and look through the budget, and with the idea and the intention to have the operating budget be presented and discussed at the January 16th meeting of council. So that is my presentation on where we're going, how we're trying to achieve it, and from staff's perspective, this is a real opportunity for us to be able to highlight some of the challenges that we face when we're putting these budgets together. But at the same time, it gives us the opportunity to have some real dialogue over the next several weeks so you can fully understand those pressures moving forward.
All right, thank you, Mr. Oakes. And I think that last slide is instructive, and the one comment I will just make with respect to the process. The last couple of years, we have moved to this version of the Budget Committee as a whole kind of situation, and the more work we've done in advance of budget night, the smoother budget night is gone, and I think the better we've all felt about the budget as we've left council chambers. I will also point out that less and less requirement for booking that second date for the budget, the operating budget, when we do more of the work beforehand. So I'll just throw that out there. I have questions from Councillor Garcia, Harris, Kushner, and Williamson, and nothing from the folks in the room. So I will look to Councillor Garcia first, followed by Harris, Kushner, and Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe Councillor Harris had his hand up first.
I do apologize. We couldn't actually see the Zoom screen, so when it came back for us, all I could see were 3 hands up in the air. So I will go with Councillor Harris, then Councillor Garcia, and then I believe Kushner and Williamson.
I guess my question is through you, Mr. Chair, to the CAO. You mentioned the idea or the program, I believe it was called Seniors Without Walls. How many, there's more programming going on or whatever, and there's 225 new participants or whatever. Do we have any sort of stat on where these people are coming from? Are they coming from outside of St. Catharines? Do you have any sort of stats?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we don't have any specific stats. We can get those and provide, so I believe that's tracked in our registration system.
And also, how many senior centers do we currently have right now, like buildings that we own?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So we have Russell Avenue Community Center, Dunlop Drive, West, and we also have Port Weller Community Center currently, as well as Port Dalhousie older adult center.
And I guess with the success of this Seniors Without Walls, have we looked at it in the sense of perhaps maybe we don't actually need these existing buildings, and perhaps we could surplus these buildings and build one central? It kind of all goes hand in hand, like where these people are actually coming from, where they're attending, and if they're more mobile. Have we looked at any things? Because I know we're going to be under some strain. Is that something we could look at in the future? Would I have to make a motion that we look at that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are looking at that, and one of the things that we've identified as part of our, not both the financial recovery plan, but also our long-term planning and rationalization, is to really look at, how best do we provide services? Is it bricks and mortar? Is it, facilities that need upgrading? All of those are essentially being discussed right now. We intend and will continue to bring opportunities to council when we see various opportunities if we can get out of certain buildings or into new. I think the Canada Games Park was a good example where we identified an issue and a need with an existing building and found an innovative approach. So that's definitely something that we're going to continue to do. And it's as part of our role and responsibility as the senior leadership team is to always look at those.
So I need to ask for a motion to perhaps analyze and come back in like a year and come up with a plan, or you're going to do that on your own?
I would suggest we're going to do it on our own. I take that as direction. It's something that we're doing. I don't know if we need to put it as a motion, and I will welcome you to challenge me in a year's time if we don't bring something back.
You're on. Okay, that's it.
All right, thanks, Councillor Harris. Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the CAO, a couple of questions. First of all, when you mentioned the pressures, the health and safety, could you please elaborate a bit on that for the benefit of council and also the public watching? Because of course we have the differentiation between the region being responsible for health, and I believe here we're talking about dealing with opioid crisis and other areas to the extent that we're responsible. If you could please elaborate on that a bit.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Specifically, I'll give you an example in our municipal works area, and Daryl Smith has provided this, the concern over the last several years, but we've identified a need to have, we can't have individual staff members going into different parks. They need to be paired up. So there's an increase in the need for that staffing requirement to ensure that the employees themselves have protection. I see Daryl's jumping on. Maybe you can provide a bit more specific.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just to sort of close the loop, what the CAO was talking about there, we've done a risk analysis of our staffing through our outdoor locations, and we have identified several areas where it is not, I don't want to say it's unsafe, but from a risk management perspective, we need to pair staff up so they're not working alone. There's 6 locations within the city. I won't get into the specific locations. And we have put some additional resources in the budget to deal with that. Just so that council is aware, we've already had to start doing that, because once you identify a risk under the Health and Safety Act, you have to take action to address it. And you will have noticed, because I have gotten comments from the public and comments from some of the members around this table, that some of the parks aren't as in good condition as they have been in the past. And that's because we've had to double up resources in other parks to make sure that our staff are working safely.
Okay, thank you for that. Did the CAO want to say anything else, or should I go on?
No, I think the CAO is content with that. continue. Go ahead and continue, Councilor
Okay.
Garcia.
Okay, yeah, so my other question through you to the CAO was, I know you listed some of the ways that we are increasing revenue, but again, for council's benefit, I know we still don't know all the impacts of this new provincial building homes legislation, but I know you list development charges and community benefits, but am I correct that under the proposed legislation, those would no longer be available to us?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the way we've identified the pressures are the legislation that we know and what we've reported already on to council with Bill 109 specifically. Some of the other implications associated with Bill 23 will have impacts, but we don't have that information yet, and we won't be able to quantify it until we actually see some of the information and the actual regulations and legislation come forward. So it's still an unknown at this point, but it will, and we're looking and working with, our partners around the province as well as with the province to get that information as soon as we can.
Okay, thank you for that. And my last point, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to ask you, since you explained a bit about the budget process and the timing, if you could share with the public that we strive very hard to get the budget approved before the end of the year, but why this year it has to be delayed until January.
I would be happy to, Councilor Garcia. And this is, for those returning councilors, they know that a large push over the last 2 terms was to get the budget completed and delivered before the start of the fiscal year. The decision was made this year after feedback from the 2018 transition when the new council came on in 2018. Some of the new councilors were concerned that at the time it was a rushed process, that they maybe didn't get as much information or didn't have as much time to digest the information as they would have preferred to have. I think the 2018 budget was a good one, but I think that more could have been done to get those new councilors up to speed. And in retrospect, we should have taken a little bit of additional time. So the decision was made after the election this year that it made more sense. We likely could have passed a budget by December 12th, but it would have been a great deal of work in a very short period of time. And I don't think any of us felt that that was a good way to initiate our new councilors. And so the decision was made to push it. I know there's a number of councilors returning and new councilors who would prefer to have this budget finished before the new year. And that will obviously be the goal for next year, and not just the goal, that will be the outcome for the 2024 multi-year budget, and that'll be completed before the end of calendar 23. But for this year, the decision was made that it was better for all to make sure we were all comfortable with the process. And as I said, the extended timeline allows us more opportunities for workshops and for answering questions to ensure that all councilors feel comfortable with the decision they're making come the 16th of January.
Thank you for that, Mr. Mayor. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Councillor Garcia. I have Councillor Kushner, followed by Councillor Williamson, and then Councillor Townsend. Councillor Kushner.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first question I have, in some categories you have numbers, but in other categories you don't. Health and safety, you have 490,000, but then in terms of investment income, you don't have a number. Why is that the case?
I'll start, maybe Christine, you can finish. The numbers that we associated are the knowns, expenditures that have been incorporated in the staff submissions. The investment income, I don't believe we have a firm handle. We know that it's trending better than what we had budgeted for, but I don't know if we have the specific. Maybe Christine can add to that.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor. With regards to the investment income, we do have a forecasted amount, and we are looking at, in the report that you have, we have grouped the various revenue generation challenges together. Obviously, the investment income will be having a positive impact, but as we move through the next few months and finalizing the budget, we we are waiting to hear if the Bank of Canada is going to make another interest rate adjustment, and that would adjust our potential forecast. So we will be finalizing that amount when we table the budget for you on December the 12th.
Right. But I would assume at this time we have an approximate number.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we do have an approximate number. I can provide that to you. I can do it one of two ways. I can say that there's approximately 2.1 million of revenue, positive revenue impacts on the 2023 operating budget, of which a significant portion of that is the investment income increase anticipated.
Right. Thank you. That's sufficient. And the second question I have is, under opportunity, you have development fees, and yet we're told that if the bill More Homes for Everyone Act, if that goes through, there will be a significant negative impact. So why do we have a positive impact in terms of opportunity, knowing very well that the province, if they introduce the More Homes for Everyone Act, the impact will be very, very negative?
I think, Councillor, it has something to do with the information we've received up to this point versus the information we know is forthcoming, but we haven't received yet. With Bill 23, the regulations haven't been brought, and so the concern is we don't actually know what those regulations will look like and how they will impact the development charge situation and the other fees. And I'll look to Mr. Oakes if there's anything else. No, he's saying that that's essentially the reason. This council, or sorry, the last term of council made decisions to bring in a variety of different charges, and that is expected to be a net positive, but the regulations that come down from Bill 23 will likely mitigate some of that, if not all of that. We don't know yet. That's the question. So it's continued to be a positive opportunity because we don't know to what extent it may put downward pressure on those revenues.
Right. Thank you. My last question is with respect to the appendix, the city tax levy increase. You have the $2 million. What's the impact on taxes of that $2 million?
I know the general answer at this time of year is that we don't yet know the full extent of the revenues and the revenue side, but I'll look to Ms. Douglas if maybe she has an estimate.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, and to the councillor. With regards to the estimated tax levy, we are waiting for the final information from MPAC with regards to our assessment roll. Although there is no increase in the assessment, overall assessment roll, or due to reassessment, there is some growth. So we are waiting. That is expected to be received next week. And therefore, at that time, we would be doing the revenue with the Bank of Canada, any announcement, as well as that impact information. Then we would be in a position to do an estimate on the tax levy impact, and it will be an estimate will be included in the report tabled on December the 12th.
Okay, but at this time, do we have a range estimate, as same question I asked with respect to investment income?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, I haven't calculated that as of yet. I've got the preliminary information in, but I haven't done the calculation, so I don't have it to provide to council this evening.
Okay, thank you. That's my final question, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kosher. Ms. Douglas, when you have an estimate, would it be possible to distribute that in a memo to council?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we could do that calculation once we have that information.
Excellent, thank you. All right, moving on, Councillor Williamson, followed by Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just some comments in terms of the process. I do much prefer, this is a more deliberative, to my way, measured process. I didn't really like the rush process. I see no need for us to really get into a panic to get it done by Christmas time. I think it also gives us the opportunity, particularly when you got a provincial government that's changing things on a weekly basis, to be able to respond to changes that they make. So, and it does give the newer councillors more opportunity to be involved and see how the process works. So I do appreciate the change to this process, particularly for this year. The CAO did make some comments in terms of outdoor ice surfaces, which are nice community opportunities for people to get involved, but I'm not sure how many usable days we get with climate change and the vagaries of winter weather and warmer days in the winter. I'm not sure how many actual usable days we get out of outdoor surfaces that don't have artificial ice. And it does rely on volunteers, and sometimes the volunteers are available and sometimes there's not. And I think there's some safety issues as well in terms of keeping the ice in a condition that is conducive to people not falling and that kind of stuff. So while in my younger days, there was maybe a few more days or weeks available for outdoor ice, that's changed a lot. And I think we have to take that into consideration. And I think a decision was made by the last council, which was to close Jack Gaycliff and the Rexheimer's facility. I think we need to relook at that and take into account what the costs of continuing to operate. And particularly, I know that Thorold is redoing their main rink, but apparently they're going to be closing down their old rink. I would like to see us work with Thorold in some kind of collaborative or cooperative arrangement, at least, to look at this, because I think that, like I said, outdoor facilities we get a lot more use of. They're climate controlled. And so that's something I think we do need to look at. And in terms of space for seniors and other people with who want to engage in recreational opportunities, and I heard from a fair number of people about new kinds of uses that are going to be, what's the new, not the tennis, the paddleball, the
Pickleball.
what's the new one I'm thinking of? Pickleball. Thank you. A great term, pickleball.
It's my favorite.
I heard from a fair number of people talking about that. Damn, I've only actually played it myself once. So we've got, and I know that they can play those on tennis courts, and we can make them so that they're flexible in their use. So that's some comments on that. In a sense, to me, it's not like we don't want to be downloading responsibilities for recreation to local residents. I think it's part of our central mandate to provide recreational opportunities for people and facilities that are of good quality. And this is going a little bit off of the charts here, a little bit indirect from budget, but the city of Hamilton just this week had another situation where they've got raw sewage leaking into the Hamilton Harbor and on out into the lake, and they've had issues in the past. And I know that we have shared responsibility with the region for that, but I don't know to the extent to which we are monitoring our outflows. I know we've added a lot of CSOs and improved our situation. We still do have some raw sewage overflows when we have significant rain events, but this is something I think is important to keep an eye on. It's something else also I heard going door to door. Councillor Kushner and Garcia and maybe Councillor Harris spoke about Bill 23, and I finally got struck by COVID a couple of weeks ago, so I wasn't at the final meeting. But I have to say I was very impressed by the Director of Planning's response. She spoke truth to power and the cost that this is going to bring to the city, both potentially financially and of course to the natural environment. And we have had in the last number of days, municipalities across, large municipalities mostly, and even some small across Ontario, responding to Bill 23. And I believe the last opportunity for public comment is on Thursday. So I don't know if we can cobble something together even tonight to respond to that, which seems to be more to the benefit of a small handful of developers, and it'll come at a significant cost to the general public and taxpayers. And it's going to have not just cost this year, but cost down the road. So I think this is something that we need to address. And my last item that I think we need to be focused on, and the last council did pass a motion, I think by Councillor Townsend, for planting a whole lot of trees. And there's much greater emphasis on dealing with climate change and expanding the work that we started with through the climate adaptation plan. I think we need to have some money in the budget to be actually measuring beyond just financial costs, but also the environmental impacts or ecological footprints of the decisions we made. So there are my comments, but generally I am pleased with a process that is a little bit more deliberative and gives people a greater opportunity and councillors a greater opportunity to consult with residents before it gets finalized. So I do appreciate that process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. And just to address it, you did have one comment about putting together final comment. There will be a letter coming from my office to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, as well as the Premier, with respect to Bill 23, and reiterating some of the concerns that the last term of council raised, as well as concerns from the Ontario Big City Mayors. We will be getting that letter out tomorrow. So rest assured, we are going to make sure that comment is received by the government. All right, I'm looking to Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the CAO. We examined our parking program, the fees in regards to our parking structures, free parking. I'm just kind of wondering where we're at on revisiting how our parking program looks.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we did intend to bring do an overall parking system review in 2023. It wasn't, it didn't move forward with the previous budget standing committee. I don't know if that is included in the 23 route. It is? Christine maybe could answer that.
I'll look to the Director of Financial Management Services.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor with regards to the parking services operations within the city. We are looking at bringing on a individual on a 2-year contract to have a review of the city's parking operations and how it functions within the city, and looking at best practices across the parking services across whether that is third party provided, whether it is a partnership, but looking at all options, and be bringing that back to council early in 2023, so that any decisions that need to be made for future year budgets will be included in the 2024 budget cycle.
That is phenomenal. Through you, Chair, I guess, do we have kind of a timeline? We're going to be hiring someone on within 2023. We're talking Q1, Q2. Do we have a rough estimate?
Ms. Douglas?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. We actually have the posting out currently. It is a position that was approved with regards to the parking services reports from earlier this year. We're in the recruitment process, and our goal is to have someone on board early January 2023.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, I guess this would go to the CAO. Other Canadian cities such as Winnipeg, Toronto, Peterborough, Vancouver are moving their arenas, indoor facilities, to a net zero approach, and they're using the FCM funding from the federal government and the Climate Challenge Network, using a 4-phase network. I guess I'm not sure who the question would go to. Is this something that we are including as a part of a budget, or even planning to apply for the grant funding or the funding to help retrofit our arenas to net zero? Or is this something that would require a councillor to bring direction to staff?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe I'll start, and then Mr. Martuccio can follow up. But we do have an energy management plan that is really intended to look at our facilities from an overarching perspective. We also have a an internal staff working group that identifies all of the various provincial, federal funding opportunities, and we work with across departments with our government relations staff to both identify opportunities and then bring them forward to the various application processes. That direction has already been provided to staff, so we're constantly looking at that. Any opportunities, though, we do welcome council to let us know if we may have missed anything, but Anthony, I think, can speak more specifically to the arenas and some of the other energy management program that we're doing.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, to the councillor. We are, again, as the CEO identified, we do have a climate change emergency, declared a climate change emergency, and whenever we carry out new works at any of our facilities, we look to implement more energy efficient solutions and carbon neutral or carbon zero type solutions into those facilities. We're currently doing the dehumidification upgrades or replacement at Seymour Hanna, and through that process, we are looking at reducing our carbon footprint by reclaiming some of the heat within the building to help run the facility. We are not looking at doing a total retrofit at this time. If you do have information on the FCM funding available, we would be glad to look into that further. Just expand on that a little more. We are building, or right now going through the process of designing a new fire station number 2, and that building is being designed to a zero carbon footprint. And it's an approach that we will be taking on any of our new builds or retrofits on our facilities.
Thank you, and thank you to the CAO and to Director Martuccio. And Chair, I'll follow up with Director Martuccio and the CAO offline in regards to the grant funding available. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Townsend. Any questions from those in the room? All right, seeing none, thank you, Mr. Oakes, for the presentation, and thank you to staff for the question and answer period. We have a motion to receive for information. Can I get a mover? Councillor McPherson, seconded Councillor Phillips. Councillor McPherson, do you want to read the recommendation?
I'd love to. The report CAO 193-2022 regarding pre-budget information, forecasted 2023 operating pressures and opportunities be received for information.
Thank you kindly. Any debate on this? Any further debate? All right, seeing none, I will look to the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Councillor Lindell?
Yes.
Councillor Kushner?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Councillor Garcia?
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff?
Yes.
Councillor Stevens?
Yes.
Councillor Townsend?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
And Mayor Cisco?
Yes.
And that's carried.
Moving on to item 8.2, the financial management services and the 2023 capital budget for your forecast and asset management status. I will now call on Richie Chung, capital planning supervisor, and Anthony Martuccio, the director of engineering, facilities, and environmental services, to present the 2023 capital budget for your forecast and asset management status.
Thank you. Good evening, Budget Chair, General Committee members, citizens, and senior staff. Before you tonight is the proposed 2023 capital budget and four-year forecast. The proposed 2023 capital budget and four-year forecast is a result of a collaborative effort amongst the various city departments. It recognizes the need to ensure that all city-owned infrastructure assets are sustainable into the future so that we can continue to provide basic core services, as well as the desire to enhance the quality of life for our residents and minimize environmental impacts while recognizing our economic challenges. The budget was developed keeping in mind many of the corporate strategic plans and master plans, such as the Transportation Master Plan, the Wastewater 10-Year Financial Plan, the Fire Master Plan, Climate Adaptation Plan, and Asset Management Plan for core assets. On this slide, we have grouped the various master plans and studies to illustrate how they align with Council's overall strategic plan. Similarly, we have highlighted some of the capital projects from the proposed 2023 capital budget and how they align to the various council priorities. Council's strategic plan plays a critical role in prioritizing capital projects. Another focus for this year was alignment with our capital program with the approved asset management plan for core assets. The current estimated replacement cost for all city-owned assets is approximately $6 billion, and the current identified backlog for our assets is approximately $660 million. This chart illustrates how general asset conditions would improve with incremental sustained funding. The asset management plan for core assets was developed using existing information available to staff and established a baseline upon which future plans can be built off of. We also began to develop decision-making tools to help inform and support decisions, all while incorporating risk into the decision-making process. Carrying out coordinated projects allows the city to take advantage of economies of scale. Coordinated projects are projects where we carry out asset renewal for multiple asset classes at one time. In determining these projects, staff identify the most urgent need for the group of assets as a whole, which means that in some cases, asset renewal on individual assets are advanced or deferred to fit the project. Regional priorities and plans are also considered through this process. The asset management plan hierarchies were established to better define the relationship between assets and the services they provide. Transportation assets include roads, active transportation, as well as right-of-way assets such as traffic signals, signs, and streetlights. Together, these assets aim to provide a safe, efficient, accessible, and sustainable transportation system for multiple modes of transportation in accordance with regulatory requirements and the expectations of the community. The continued maintenance, repair, and renewal of these assets is critical in order to promote activity, livability, and connectivity, and result in a network of transportation infrastructure that enables peoples and goods to travel seamlessly, utilizing many modes of transportation. The proposed works continue to have a strong focus on the renewal and expansion of active transportation facilities within the community. You will also notice that the capital budget includes these condition performance graphs for the major core asset classes. These graphs identify what the forecasted condition of each asset class will be if current funding levels are maintained. Transportation assets are primarily tax-based expenditures, and as identified in the asset management plan, this asset class is currently underfunded. Based on this, staff continue to prioritize budgets for these assets. The water distribution system provides safe and reliable drinking water and supports fire suppression for the residents and businesses within the urban boundary. The works proposed in the budget include the replacement of critical water mains that have experienced multiple breaks, color water issues, or where materials have reached the end of their useful life. This asset class primarily includes rate-based expenditures, and as identified in the asset management plan, implementing the planned rate increases identified in the water wastewater financial plan will allow for a robust water main replacement program that maintains the current condition of our water mains. It is critical that we continue to work towards reestablishing the proposed funding levels identified in the plan. This, along with proactive operational programs, will allow our system sustainable into the future. Staff continue to prioritize water assets due to the high level of risk associated with them. The wastewater distribution system conveys sewage from residential, commercial, and industrial properties within the urban boundaries to the regional trunk main and ultimately to the wastewater treatment plants before being released into the lake. Priority sewer sections were identified through a city-wide zoom camera inspection and evaluation project that was recently completed. The priority sewer sections have identified deficiencies with the potential basement flooding. The proposed budget includes the allocation to address some of the top priority locations and conduct further CCTV inspections to more accurately identify potential concerns. Similar to water, it is critical to achieve the funding identified in the water wastewater financial plan in order to maintain current condition ratings for this asset class. The majority of the storm sewer work is focused on the installation of new storm sewers to allow for the separation of stormwater from combined sewers or from infiltration into the sanitary sewers. This type of work assists in alleviating basement flooding and overflows into the environment. The proposed works also include the provision of CCTV inspections for parts of the storm sewer system to better identify concerns with regards to the condition of our storm drainage system. The storm sewer assets are a tax-based expenditure, and as a result, existing funding levels may not be sustainable in the long term. Also, more than half of our annual budget goes towards new storm sewers as the city continues to work towards improving service to both protect and benefit the community and the environment. The city owns and operates a vast variety of city-owned facilities that support both corporate functions, such as in City Hall, Lake Street Service Center, and our fire stations, as well as recreational and cultural functions, such as in our arenas, senior centers, park amenities, and museums. The 2023 budget includes renewal and repair work to many of these facilities to allow for the continued safe use, implementation of accessibility, and to meet operational needs of the corporation. Many of these works support strategic plans approved by council, such as the Sunset Beach Master Plan, Arena Strategy, Fire Master Plan, and Conservation Demand Management Plan. Other projects include renewal work to bridges and culverts, improvements to our natural assets through projects that stabilize our shorelines, and improve the overall condition of our watercourses. The city also continues to work collaboratively with the region to improve city assets through contributions to regional projects. The capital budget includes approximately $5.1 million for projects that continue to support climate change and environmental stewardship through projects that improve or protect our natural assets and improve the efficiency of our facilities. This budget also includes approximately $8.5 million for projects that support active and healthy living by implementing improvements to our active transportation network, renewing some of our park amenities, and making improvements to our recreational facilities. These projects are within the CRCS and facilities budgets. I will now pass things over to Richie Chung, the city's capital planning supervisor.
Thanks, Anthony. So one item we want to highlight in the 2023 capital budget is the St. Catharines Central Library renovation project, which would be a major project over this term of council. It has been split into 3 phases over 3 years. Phase 1 is focused on the design and basement. Phase 2 works on the ground floor, and Phase 3 is on the 2nd and 3rd floor. This project supports inclusivity, accessibility, and includes green components in the project scope. A full conceptual design can be found in the appendix attached to the capital budget report. Some highlights include a green roof, gender-neutral bathrooms, a full accessible 3rd floor, as well as improved thermal properties of the building. Council approval of Phase 1 is recommended so that staff can continue with the grant application for this project. To mitigate project risk, which is a component of the grant application, staff is recommending that Phase 1 is to proceed with design and planning stage of the project, but to hold off on construction until we've received successful approval of the grant. Further updates will be coming back to Council on the grant as we move out throughout the process. All the projects included in the 2023 capital budget total $71.4 million. Consistent with prior years, we funded these expenditures from a variety of sources. Canada Community Building Fund, which is formerly known as the Federal Gas Tax Fund, continues to provide an ongoing source of funding year over year. Current year contributions is $4.4 million. This is decreased in half from the prior year, which had a one-time doubling from the federal government. Reserve contributions include development charge and the newly approved funding source of community benefit charges. Other reserves include the building reserves, Meridian Event Fund, and the Meridian Center Capital Reserve. Tax support and water and wastewater rates and capital revenue total approximately $17 million, and the balance of the funding comes from debt, which is providing 60% of the total funding in 2023, which is increasing as expected as we align the capital program to the asset management plan. The debt funding of the city's capital expenditure is guided by the 3 key standards in the city's debt management strategy that are listed in the current slide. Of note, we will slowly normalize the capital out of revenue, which is reduced to 5% for the last 2 years now compared to the 10% policy. While COVID isn't over, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and thus the proposed plan is to return back to the 10% policy in 2026. This will help us return to the policy while also considering the impacts that COVID had on taxpayer affordability. While the debt strategy caps debt charges at 10% of own source revenue, the current forecast reflects ratios above 10% in 2023 and thereafter. Debt will play a critical role in aligning the city to the asset management plan. As identified in the 2021 asset management plan, there's a funding gap in the tax support core capital program of $32 million to maintain the existing level of service. A financial strategy will be forthcoming in 2025 as part of the Ontario legislation for municipalities to proceed down the path of asset management. Given the infrastructure gap and the increased requirements to invest in the city's assets, contributions from the operating budget to support the capital has increased. As a reminder, 2021 and 2022 had significant reductions as a result of the pandemic, and the strategy to reduce the capital revenue to 5% compared to the 10%. While the operating contributions are increasing compared to the 2 years, keep in mind pre-pandemic the contributions were as follows. In 2020, taxpayer support was $4 million and rate support was $9.2 million. The rate program follows our strategy, which reduced spending for the last 2 years and to pick it back up in future years. This makes sure that we're still aligned to the requirements of the Safe Drinking Water Act legislation. The levy program is a modest increase compared to the pre-pandemic level, especially when factoring in inflationary costs of construction. Looking at our capital plans and related funding over the next 5 years is required by the Municipal Act. These forecasts also support debt forecasts. The average capital budget for the next 5 years is $75 million. Staff's goal was to align the capital program to the asset management plan, and in phase 1 of the asset management plan, which only included core assets, the minimum amount of capital investments to sustain the existing level of service is $69 million. This number will increase as we complete phase 2, which will include all other assets. Phase 1 focused on what the province calls core assets, which are linear assets such as roads, water, and wastewater infrastructure. Phase 2 focuses on everything else, with the largest assets in phase 2 likely being our buildings and recreational assets. The other goal of the multi-year forecast is to mitigate any fluctuations and volatility in the capital program to avoid taxpayer impacts. As we align to the asset management plan, more debt will be required. The graph shows the debt servicing costs in the lower gray blocks, and then also shows the council-imposed debt limit of 10% of our own source revenue in blue. Looking at the current forecast shows the 2022 debt servicing ratio at 10.02%, which was approved last year to be above the 10% council limit, which we will be again recommending to be above this threshold in 2023. Due to the increase of the AMP requirements, the forecasted debt servicing ratio is expected to peak around 14% in 2027. Having said that, looking at the orange line, the city remains well within the provincial limit known as the annual repayment limit and is set at 25% of our own source revenues. The debt limits will change as actual results are incorporated into the ratios. For conservativeness, we estimated interest rates at 5% for the forecast. Current interest rates are closer to 4.25% for 10-year debentures. The capital and operating budget are interrelated. This slide shows the connections. So they're connected as the operating budget provides direct funding to the capital budget through capital out of revenue charges, reserve funding, direct support for roads and sidewalks capital program, and the infrastructure levy. Also, the operating budget funds the debt servicing on the debt issued to fund the capital budget. In 2023, capital overhead charges will once again provide funding back into the operating budget for an additional project management resource to help us work on our project backlog. In conclusion, I want to highlight that the 2023 capital budget report before you today includes a staff recommendation for council's consideration after the public meeting where the budget is tabled, which staff are targeting for December 12th. Recommendation 1, 7, and 8 are consistent with previous capital budget approvals and are administrative in nature. Recommendation 2, 3, and 6 relate to the funding of the 2023 capital budget, and specific exceptions have been made related to the approved debt management strategy, including funding capacity. Recommendation 4 creates operational capacity with the approval of an additional FTE for project management for the 2023 capital budget. And recommendation 5 is for risk mitigation related to the Central Library renovation project. Next steps are for council to review the report and appendices and provide questions back to staff by November 30th. Staff will answer questions and provide analysis by December 5th, and any amendments for staff will need to be made and submitted for December 7th at noon so that we can target the December 12th date for the public meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This concludes staff presentation on the 2023 capital budget and 24 to 27 forecast. And I'll pass it back to you. And give me a few moments. I'm going to join you upstairs in a minute.
Sounds good. And we have been joined by Mr. Martuccio as well here in council chambers. I have Councillor Townsend followed by Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, very excited to see the library renovation happening. The green roof looks phenomenal. My question is in regards to renewable energy on the library. Have staff considered the inclusion of things like solar panels? And the reason I bring that up is if you look at the town of Halton Hills, they included in their arenas, their library, even their town hall, solar panels to cut down on energy use and costs. So my question is, have we looked at including these types of energy? Again, there's grant funding for it through the Green Municipal Fund.
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair. We have looked at the use of solar panels in the past. We had a partnership with Electra at one point. It did not come to fruition just due to the funding agreement. As I mentioned previously, we are looking at building a net zero fire hall number 2 within the city of St. Catharines, and currently solar panels are part of the design for that facility.
Okay, thank you. And through you, Chair, I mean, we're spending, did I see the number correct, 15 million to renovate the library? 15? And I'm trying to get my head around why we didn't include, I'm sure maybe Councillor Williamson can touch on it. I know he sits on the library board. I just see a lot of potential for solar paneling. And again, FCM has that funding available. So I'm just trying to understand that. Thanks.
Ms. Douglas?
Thank you. Through the mayor to the chair. I believe that we have the executive director from the library board and the manager of administration and finance from the library. They've been working very closely with the architect with regard to the library renovation. So perhaps it might be a good idea to ask them to give some comments with regards to the library project and the energy efficient features that have been considered.
All right, Mr. Sue.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor. Yes, we did meet with Councillor, with architect multiple times to discuss potential possibilities to include all kinds of green energy or carbon reduction options in the renovation project. But because this is still kind of like phase 1 conceptual design stage, so when she provided the initial drawing, it's just kind of illustrated, like for instance, like green roof and like some kind of internal design, but she hasn't got into details in terms of the, because she talked about, for instance, like the glass, and she's thinking of using more kind of like reflective glass, so you kind of like the heat not going to be easily into the building. And then also she talked about like LED lighting inside the library and all those kind of things. I think that will be more considered in the phase 2 kind of detailed design, and then of course that will also have a price tag attached to that. But it's our goal when I met with the city staff is try to get as much federal and provincial support possible to support this, green energy and carbon reduction project.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Chair, and thank you to Mr. Sue for coming and explaining that. So it is there's still potential to include this. It's only early drawings, correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor. Yes, so actually we have been talking to Richie and Lucia at the city. Right now we are looking at one federal grant. I think that's called the Green and Inclusive Building Grant. So I think that's something we are looking into. And as I said earlier, because it's still in a very early stage of the design, and I think the architect will be able to provide more information down the road.
Thank you. And yes, that is the exact grant I'm talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. Going to Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just speaking to the library, we did have the architect present at, I don't know if it was the last meeting or it was a recent meeting, and I did ask those questions. We are going to have a vestibule. We've never had a double set of doors, sealed doors on the James Street courtyard side. I don't know that solar panels will make much sense. We have a 30-story condominium just to the west of the building. That might not make sense, so they'll have to consider that structure being there. Yeah, but it should improve the energy efficiency and greenhouse gas emissions, et cetera. The whole carbon footprint should be reduced when it's said and done. I have a question to Mr. Martuccio. Mr. Martuccio talked about the CCTV camera inspection technology that we've been using. And back to my question related to what's happened in Hamilton. I guess we now have eyes, Mr. Martuccio, on more pipes and tubes and underground infrastructure than we've had in the past. And would that mean that we've got greater visibility and penetration in terms of monitoring and making sure we don't have as many leaks as we did in the past?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, there's actually a new reg that came down from the province. It's related to consolidated infrastructure, and it relates directly to our storm and sanitary sewers. And as part of that reg, monitoring and reporting on that type of stuff to the ministry is part of that reg, and it's something that staff are working towards becoming more diligent moving forward on minimizing the amount of overflow from our sewer systems into the environment.
Thank you. And then in terms of how are we stacking up compared to other municipalities in terms of separation of sanitary and storm sewers? Are we making some good progress?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, every year we are looking to minimize infiltration into our storm sewers from either rainwater or so that we can minimize the number of days that we are having overflows. With regards to how we're performing to other municipalities, St. Catharines is an older municipality which has a lot of combined sewers. So I can't give you how we're performing to other municipalities, but just due to the nature of the type of city that we are, we do have more combined sewers that we are dealing with, and every year we are working at separating more of those storms or those combined sewer systems, not only to minimize overflow into the environment, but also to create capacity within our storm sewer, our sanitary sewer systems. And we are also working with the region of Niagara to through programs that they have available to help fund some of those sewer separation projects.
Thank you very much. And I'm not sure if this question is to you, but it's in regards to the surface treatments we choose for pathways and trails. We know that paving over green space is never a good thing for the environment. Green spaces are important natural heat sinks. They reduce the heat island effect in urban areas. And we know that when we put down hard surfaces, we have greater flash flooding and more issues that way. So we talked about having a hierarchy. When Malcolmson Park trails were recently done, they were done with stone dust as opposed to hard surface. And I understand that there's locations where we're going to need hard surface. That makes sense. But I hope we're taking a rational approach and looking at the environmental side of things and putting hard surfaces where they're needed and going to softer surfaces or alternative, more permeable surfaces where it makes sense and there's not the heavy demand for traffic. Are we looking at that when we're spending this money on resurfacing trails?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair. We are, as mentioned previously, we are working through an active transportation master plan, which will classify the different levels of trail systems, which will then identify the type of surface treatment that is required for the various levels. Some will be hard surface, whether it's asphalt or other types of hard surface. Some will be stone dust. It all depends on the level of service that we want to provide for those specific trails. We're also looking at it for our parking lots and looking at more permeable type pavings for our parking lots as well to help improve with those types of concerns. Another thing that can be done for hard surface trails is looking at tree plantings and stuff like that to mitigate the amount of heat that is actually, the amount of heat that the trail sees. by planting trees and providing shade for those types of trail systems. We are looking at various solutions to try to reach the climate goals that we've established for ourselves.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Councillor Kushner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reduction in the deficiency gap is certainly good news, but at the same time, what is worrisome is the percentage of the budget that how this will impact the percentage of the budget. Yes, our upper limit was 10%, and now we're approaching 14%. I think was 14% in a few years. When are we going to try and reduce that back to 10%? I realize the upper limit, we're not near the upper limit, but I would think no municipality would be close to that upper limit, upper legal limit. So what's the longer term strategy with respect to the percentage?
Ms. Douglas.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. When we look at funding our capital program, we have a limited number of options as to how we can fund the program. And one of the reasons that we do look at debt is debt, just because of its nature of paying for the capital project over a longer period of time. It does allow for future residents to be able to contribute to the cost of the asset to which they benefit. When we're looking at, the asset management plan and bringing on another phase 2 of the asset management plan for all the city assets, the need for city to utilize debt is going to continue to be part of the financial strategy. With regards to when the percentage, we will be looking to bringing it closer down to the 10%. I think that it's going to take a number of years. The majority of our debentures are for a 10-year term. So as we bring on more debt, us coming back down to the 10% limit, I think is going to be longer into the future.
And what will the new debt cost us in as a percentage? What are we paying on the new debt compared to the old debt?
Through you,
Is that one of the reasons why? I'm sorry. Is that one of the reasons why it's increasing quite rapidly in a few years? Is because we're financing it with high interest debt now?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, our forecast does include an estimated interest rate of 5%. Right now, the 2022 debt that we did take on was at 3.8%. When we look at Infrastructure Ontario, their current long-term debt rate is approximately 4.5%. The forecast is a little bit higher, so that forecast that we had of at the 14%, depending on what happens with the interest rates on the long-term debt, we could potentially be under that. The other, I think, important factor is with regards to the amount of debt that the city does take on in any particular year, and although we're estimating $42 million being funded by debt in this year. It will depend on when the projects are actually completed. The city has a practice not to bring on debt until the project is actually completed. So that does allow us to monitor the interest rate environment as well when we take on our debt issuance.
Okay. Thank you for the detailed answer.
Thank you, Councillor Kushner. And I will just tack on with respect to some of the questions there. I think it's important to recognize, and I don't know how many people have ever seen one of these. This is the BMA study. It's that thick. It's an interesting report. This is the 2021 study because the 2022 has not yet come out. So I'm waiting with bated breath for that. But it's important to recognize that relative to other similarly sized municipalities, our debt load is not out of the norm. And we have to take into consideration that this is an older municipality. The City of St. Catharines has been around for a long time, and a lot of our infrastructure is aging and is getting to end of life. And so where we see those increases in capital expenditures, there is a very good reason for that. But to compare debt from one municipality to another, again, when you look at similarly sized municipalities across the province of Ontario, and specifically municipalities that have that are of the age that St. Catharines is, our debt load is very reasonable, and even the increases that we see in the forecast are reasonable compared to those other municipalities. I'll go now to, I have Councillor Garcia, followed by Councillor Stevens, Councillor Phillips, and then Councillor Harris. Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, first of all, some clarification for everyone and the public. We are asking questions here and looking at this presentation, but we're not really approving the capital budget after the public meeting. Is that correct?
That is 100% correct. I believe December 12th is the capital budget night, so we are not approving anything this evening. This is an information gathering exercise, and I would encourage strongly councillors, if they have further questions, as I said, at those budget meetings, workshops next week, you can bring questions at that time as well. And the general public can submit comment as well if they have questions or concerns about the capital budget.
Fair enough. I do have a number of questions, but since Councillor Kushner brought up the debt ratio, I will start with that one. I have the same concern, which I've always had, and I share with Councillor Kushner. I understand your comment about this being an older municipality, but you know, we do have a council-approved policy to keep it at 10%, and we agreed to go a little bit higher this coming year. But 14% I have real problems with, and I can certainly not support that, but that's for another day. But I just think that we keep fooling ourselves by saying, well, we're not as bad as other municipalities, and we're not up to the legal limit, but I see that as a slippery slope to keep on adding debt, and I think we have to manage that better. But anyway, my questions are, number one, I noticed in the specific budgets that the number put in for shoreline protection is relatively tiny. So through you to Director Martuscio, is there a reason for that? Do we not expect to have any major projects in 2023?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, that's correct. Based on the shoreline protection study that we carried out a few years ago, we addressed many of the high priority locations. The next location that we are looking to do shoreline protection is at Sunset Beach, and we are currently just doing maintenance on some of the existing shoreline protection. There will be a larger shoreline protection project coming in future years, and will probably be reflected in the future budget.
Thank you for that. And to you, Mr. Mayor, while we're talking about shoreline protection, I haven't looked at that huge document in detail yet, but through you to Director Martuscio, I assume we still have in the plan what we approved on the budget for replacing the Maysfield stairs, and that a design work had to be done for that. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, that's correct. Staff made an attempt to open up some of the stairs in the Port Dalhousie area. Obviously, there's some obstacles that were identified in the process. There will be a future report coming to council identifying some of the concerns that were identified, so that council can make further decisions with regards to the stairs within the Port Dalhousie area.
Thank you for that. And through you, Mr. Mayor, I certainly hope that we can look at that, the staff will look at that early enough so that we don't go into the middle of the summer working on this and having everybody complaining about stairs not being open. My second question, Mr. Mayor, through you, relate to the recommendation to add another full-time employee. And I always get concerned about the fact that we keep adding stuff, and it's all pretty high-paid stuff. So if, I don't know if this is Director Douglas who would explain a little bit about why do we need another full-time employee?
Ms. Douglas?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. The reason that staff has included another project management staff to include in the 2023 capital budget, it's a project manager staff to assist our parks and recreation team for them to develop the various projects for the various parks across the city. Right now, that work is shared with our engineering department staff, and COVID has taught us a lot about what our citizens would like to see in our community and the services that they value, and we know how important our park assets are. And with the addition of this additional staff member, it will provide the resource to develop these park projects, and so that we're able to complete these capital projects in a more timely manner.
Thank you for that, Director. And through you, Mr. Mayor, are you saying that without this new person, we wouldn't be able to complete these projects on time if they're already approved?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. My last question, Mr. Mayor, I know we've talked a bit about the library, but since we have Mr. Sue on board, I'd just like to get some clarification. I've looked at some of the plans, and I agree with Councillor Townsend that obviously we need to upgrade and update the library, but we see a lot of what's happening inside, but do we need to do major changes to the facade of the building as well?
Mr. Mayor, through you to the councillor, I think the library's scope is to do the building itself, because anything outside of the library is a city property. So I think one example I can say is, for instance, the walkway. So that is definitely library taking into consideration, because right now the walkway is kind of fenced in, and I think with the previous council, the library did indicate whenever we do the renovation, we will take that into consideration and take that space, reclaim them into the library as an internal space. And also I think the library is going to look into, for instance, the library garage, and then try to redo the garage entranceway, so provide better access to the public. But anything outside of the library, that will be the city responsibility. And in terms of when you say facade, I'm just thinking, I think the library is going to look into more kind of prominent kind of publicity or promotion on the outside of the library, like a new brand and things like that. But for any other, like the plaza or whatever in front of the library, that is a city responsibility.
Thank you. To you, Mr. Mayor, but whether it's a city's responsibility or yours, will the main structure of the building remain in place, or are we talking about making changes to that as well?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor, the outside main feature will stay, but as you see in the mock-up, for instance, right now the glass slope roof will be changed to green roof, because there are a couple of reasons for that. One is, of course, for energy efficiency and carbon reduction. And another issue the library has had is the slope roof, especially in the winter time, whenever we have a winter snowstorm or ice buildup on the slope, and often that blocks the main James Street entrance, because ice sliding down and becomes a hazard. And so I think that's another reason why we are changing that. So that will be a more kind of structural change.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Garcia. Councillor Stevens.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess to engineering services, just for information for myself. So on the budget, proposed budget pages there, 7, 8, 10, and 12 with the diagrams of the different areas. Are those lines like ones under transportation? So I guess that's like road repairs. And water distribution, that would be water lines and such? Like you said?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, that's correct. We've identified the projects that fit within that asset class on the map. So for wastewater, it would be sewer replacement, or for water mains, it would be water main replacement, and roads. Roads is a combination, transportation is a combination of roads, sidewalks, and active transportation routes.
Okay, and so are those items that are looking, they will be getting done?
Yes, those are projects that are included within the proposed 2023 capital budget.
And then what does preliminary mean? When is that happening or not happening? Then? Like on Niagara Street with stormwater, I have a preliminary written underneath there. I'm just not sure what that means. Like, is that a for sure or maybe fix?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, I'd have to look at that closer in order to provide an accurate answer on that.
Okay, I heard a lot about Niagara Street being really in rough shape, and then I see a lot of work scheduled for that, and then some preliminary added as well, so I just wasn't sure what the difference was. So.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Budget Chair, Niagara Street is a shared responsibility with the region as well. So preliminary could mean that we are putting funds aside in order to accommodate the funds that the city will have to contribute towards that project, and they may be in preliminary stages of that project.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Phillips, followed by Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor Cisco. Got it right tonight. In regards to the additional project manager, you mentioned that this position will be looking after improving parks and dealing basically with parks and recreation. But it says that the position is going to be funded through an overhead charge to related capital projects. So this person's salary is going to be paid. What's an overhead charge? I guess that's a new one to me.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So we introduced this concept in the 2022 budget with a project manager. And what the overhead charge means is that typically salary and wages are an operating budget expense item. So what's going to happen is we're adding that, but instead of having an impact on the tax levy for that, the wages are going to be part of the capital project charge. And it is a practice that is used by a number of municipalities, and it is something that is permitted as a eligible expenditure for the capital project, because the work that the project manager will be doing is directly tied to the project the projects that are being delivered.
So what you're saying is his salary or her salary will be part of the debenture.
No, because all of the capital projects that are debenture funded, they at least have a portion that is capital out of revenue. So we are working to ensure that any of the charges that are charged to the capital projects are funded by a source that isn't debenture funded. However, it is permitted that those wages could be part of the funded by debenture, because it is a cost that is directly attributed to the delivery of that particular capital project.
Okay. And secondly, I definitely agree with Councillor Kushner and Councillor Garcia. We need a debt management plan to try and reduce that percentage as much as we can, because it does, and we've done a lot of good things to, as far as construction in previous councils, as far as the Kiwanis Aquatic Center was debentured, Meridian Center is debentured, so I can appreciate the fact that that percentage has risen quickly, but we really have to try and grind it to a halt. And lastly, in regards to the Meridian Center, we're getting into capital expenditures now. I see that we need some more kitchen facility or equipment. We just replaced the lighting with LED lights because at the time of construction there wasn't enough money in the budget, I believe, to put LEDs in them because they were so expensive. Is there a possibility of talking with the contractor to add a levy or a surcharge per ticket as we do at the Performing Arts Center. The Performing Arts Center, correct me if I'm wrong, but there is a levy that goes into a capital reserve for them. I don't know if it's $1 a ticket or something like that. Is it possible to approach the contractor to say, I'm not saying $1 a ticket, 50 cents a ticket or something like that over the season, to put into a capital reserve so that when a big item like we're getting, and it's going to be, they're going to get bigger as time goes on, that it would be paid for basically by the users?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, with regards to the Meridian Centre and doing a ticket surcharge, we have had discussions with the contractor previously. One of the challenges for the operating model with regards to the Meridian Centre, there is another agreement with regards to the main tenant in the facility, which does provide some restrictions on that. And then other events, when they're looking to bring ticketed entities into the building, additional charges of that nature do have an impact on the ability of the facility to attract those additional acts. Having said that, we can, reach back out to the contractor to refresh that review and bring information back to council on it. I would also like to share with council with regards to the Meridian Centre and its operations, when we do have 2 small reserves related to the Meridian Centre. One is for capital and the other is for event sponsorship. And those reserves came into being in the years when the Meridian Centre had a positive budget position. So meaning if they had, a net budget of $500,000 and they came in lower than that and the city was in a positive position, then that difference would be able to be transferred into the reserves to support that. So we are looking at ways to create a reserve. So some of the items that are needed by the Meridian Centre are funded by that reserve, but as you have indicated about the ticket surcharge, we can do a reach out to the contractor on that.
Okay, if I could, Mr. Mayor, to give direction to staff to investigate that, please.
All right, so that's direction to staff.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Harris.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to see, it seems like we're going to have to be innovative with coming up with some ideas. We have a lot of construction on the go. Would it be possible to give a direction that perhaps before we move forward with some of this construction that we engage Electra? And the reason I mention that is because we were very successful in helping out the Canada Summer Games in the Henley Island with incorporating a net zero system and supplying solar panels. So do I need to make a motion, or can I actually just give a direction that prior to doing anything, especially the library, that perhaps we engage Electra or someone similar to Electra, that perhaps, I would assume Electra since we own part of the company, but.
I'm looking to Mr. Martuccio.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we could take that as a direction on projects moving forward.
Okay, and could we also possibly ask for some input on some of our existing properties? Like maybe we can put solar panels on the roof at City Hall, the Meridian Centre, the 4-pad, and some of our buildings.
So
could we do that as well?
I like the idea, but I'm looking to staff. I think that goes beyond direction and may require us to.
I'll do a motion if you want.
Well, I realize that. I think what you're looking for is the staff to go to Electra and report back on what possibilities may exist. So I'm thinking perhaps we hold this as a report request at the end of the meeting.
Perfect. And then the next thing I just wanted to see, we talked about hiring staff, and I forgot to mention, we mentioned hiring staff in the last report. I think we're hiring a parking supervisor for 2 years at a range between 72,000 and 82,000, perhaps. I have a couple questions about that, but I have a question about hiring a project manager. When we decide to hire people, do we actually do a comparison or analysis of perhaps hiring a consultant as compared to hiring a full-time staff? And how do we come up with like the terms, like a 2-year contract and things like that? I guess I'm not sure who would answer that. Maybe David Oakes or the treasurer.
Ms. Douglas drew the short straw.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. I'll begin, and perhaps the CAO and our Director of Corporate Support Services can comment as well. With regards to staffing, when we look at, I guess, the level of compensation, we do have salary grids, and there is an evaluation that, a job evaluation that gets completed for each job. And HR takes that information and determines where it fits on the salary grid in relation to other positions within the corporation for fairness and equity reasons. With regards to whether a staff member is hired on a permanent or a contract basis. It depends on the nature of the work, and also with regards to the budget requirements. In particular, with regards to the parking supervisor position, it was determined that we do understand that the need for parking services to be reviewed, and with us not being sure at this point, what exactly the future of parking services may look like within the corporation, staff made the determination that a contract position made logical sense within the parking services review at this time.
Okay, just to touch on that point, I don't remember that coming to council, so maybe when you get a chance, you can send that report, because I thought at the budget last year, there was some talk about it, and it got, I can't remember. I thought there was supposed to be a full review done, and that didn't get approved. So I don't really recall that we were going to hire a full-time staff for 2 years to review. And I guess the second question would be, when we talk about equity and pay and all that, how do we know what to compare it to if it's a new position? Do we go by other municipalities?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe I'll answer the first question, and I'll pass it over to Jeanette Pelletieri on the equity piece. The specific to, you're correct, there was a report that was brought forward to the Budget Standing Committee last year that was recommending a review of the parking system and parking services. That was not approved. However, in the beach strategy report, when the paid parking was introduced, the idea of the parking supervisor position was brought forward in that report with the intent to do a system sort of overview in all the entire parking system, and that's how that brought forward. We are also, as part of the discussion on employees and bringing on new employees, there's a function of the work and making sure that we're able to get the work out the door. But it's also balanced against, business cases and the various directors provide a business case as to why, a new employee, new staffing resource would be required. And then that gets reviewed. We're in the process of building that process out more robustly so we can look at full analysis, but specifically to the equity piece, I'll let Jeanette answer that question.
I just interrupt for 1 sec. So before we decided that we needed to hire these people, there was analysis done that it's cheaper to hire someone full-time for 2 years than getting a consultant? And same with the project management position? Like there was some sort of analysis?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, specific to that position, that it's multifaceted. So the first piece was looking at the parking system, and with the introduction of the paid parking at the beaches, there was at that time, and part of the review, the need to have, because there was a need for the staff. It was decided at that time to do it as a contract because of we don't have the long-term parking strategy in place. So the notion was the contract can achieve two purposes. One is the immediate needs of the parking system, and two, the review of the overall system.
and so for the project manager, it was cheaper to, like, I'm just trying to figure it out, right? Like, so instead of, because a lot of companies that do this type of work provide project management as well. Like, I know it's above and beyond their cost of their contract, but like, we've done analysis to figure out it's cheaper to hire someone to do this project management piece.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe I can answer the question on the, help answer the question on the project manager part. So any project that the city carries out, whether we engage a project management firm or not, requires a city representative in order to navigate that project through the various processes and procedures that we have here at the city, whether it's procurement, budgeting, stakeholder engagement, providing information related to projects. There's a wide scope of work that our project managers do. There's on quite a few of our projects, actually, we do engage, our project managers engage third-party consultants in order to carry out the design and contract administration for those projects. So a project manager is responsible for ensuring that the project's delivered in accordance with city policies, on budget, and on time, I guess is the term that's used. So that's the project manager's responsibility from a city perspective.
Oh, you're eliminating the need to hire project managers like as consultants when you hire this position?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So project management is a term that's used very loosely on the delivery of projects. So there's a project manager from the consultant side that carries out coordination related to specifics related to the design, and then the project manager for the city carries out a more broad role in ensuring that the project is carried out in accordance with city policies.
I guess I'm just confused. I'm going to be voting against that. I guess I don't know when I make that motion, but I still don't really understand. Is this person going to coordinate? Is this person coordinating invoices, coordinating the job? Does it need to be a project manager?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the project manager is a role that almost all city employees take on when they're carrying out a specific task for a project for the city, whether it's a construction project, an IT project. It's basically a person that is responsible for the successful delivery of a project.
So I'm going to jump in here and I'm going to ask Councillor Harris if perhaps he can put a list of his concerns and his questions related to this into an email to Mr. Martuccio and Ms. Douglas so that they can come back with a memo in advance of the capital budget being decided on the 12th. We're not going to be voting for or against anything in the capital budget tonight. That'll be held for the 12th, but I think Councillor Harris is asking some questions and needs some clarification. I think a couple of us would like clarification on the questions he's asking as well. So,
does that mean you want to hold off too on asking for a report on engaging outside companies about energy management and zero net, like sustainable, like pretty well everything to do with buildings and new builds and retrofits?
Well, that was the report. That was the report request we were going to be making after this item, right?
Okay.
Okay. So if direction to staff then for a memo to come back to council. And Councillor Harris, you're going to follow up with Mr. Martuccio and Ms. Douglas?
I will indeed, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments about the capital budget? All right. I'm not seeing any. The motion tonight is to refer the report and the budget to the December 12th meeting for consideration of the staff recommendation, which we will give notice for. Could I get a mover and a seconder?
Sorry.
Oh, Councilor Williamson, I see your hand up, so I'm going to hold off asking for a mover and a seconder if you've got a further question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this may be a separate report, or it may be a situation where staff can call together information from past reports, but we have a new council with 3 new members on it, and we'll be witnessing the changes that will take place, or demolition, or what have you, to the Gatecliff and Rex Steimer's facility. And I think it behooves us to look at what the costs, the operating costs are, what the costs of actually demolishing it and what the future potential plans are for it. We will have now a little bit of an experience with having 1/3 access to the Canada Games facility, as well as the Brock folks who have moved out of, some have moved out of our arenas, some have moved out of Thorold arenas into there. So I would appreciate if we could also get a report on that status there, what's happening. And because I think it cost us $65,000 to continue operating it for 8 months. And I think there is an opportunity with Thorold. Maybe there's an opportunity to do some energy efficiency stuff there too. So if we could just get a report on that, because I think it's important for the new councillors who would be involved in this process now to know what's happening there.
Okay, so we're gonna make that a report request after we get through the capital budget report now, and we'll add that. We'll have 2 report requests. So can I get a mover and a seconder for the capital budget? Councillor Phillips, Councillor Miller. I'm going to look to the clerk to call the roll on the recommendation on the screen.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlav.
Yes.
Councillor Stevens.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Lindell.
Yes.
And Mayor Cisco.
Yes.
And that's carried.
All right, so we're moving on to motions, and there are no motions tonight, but we are going to put report requests right here. The first one is Councillor Harris's report request on net zero. He's looking at me because I called him Councillor Zero, and I didn't mean to.
Councillor Zero, you're my feelings.
Councillor Phillips says we all make mistakes. It's true. On net zero opportunities with buildings and partnership opportunities with Electra. I think that was you were looking for. If you want to expand on that, Councillor.
I think, look into developing a relationship with Electra and see if there's possibilities with new and existing things, retrofits. Maybe there's a performance contracting where we actually don't even have to outlay money for equipment. They can incorporate it into a performance contract, solar panels, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, so we're looking for a report from staff on the possibility of partnering with Electra on net zero initiatives in our facilities, whether it be new builds or retrofits of existing facilities. Does that capture it, Councillor Harris?
That sounds wonderful.
Excellent. I see Councillor Garcia has a question related to this report request.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to ask for you, Councillor Harris, as the chair of our board, St. Catharines Hydro, whether we should include St. Catharines Hydro in that report, and we should try to also contact Electra, or?
I think that would be a good idea, but I think I'll take the direction. I'm sure Anthony will get back to us in a timely manner. I think maybe one of your suggestions might be to put a date on it when it comes back to us.
I'm gonna look to Mr. Martuccio. Is there a, without binding your hands, Mr. Martuccio, when do you think a report like this would be possible?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, it would, a report like this would be at least Q1, Q2 of next year.
So let's say Q2 of 2023.
You know what, maybe instead of like part of that, that's fine, but the report, maybe we can have an initial conversation with Electra within the next little bit. How's that? I will even facilitate it for you.
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, I would love to be a part of that process.
The smile on Mr. Martuccio's face as he contemplates a conversation with Councillor Harris is enormous. Councillor Garcia, any other questions or comments with respect to this one?
No, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't miss an opportunity there. So.
Excellent. Councillor Williamson, to this, to the net zero request?
No, it's for the separate request for report.
Okay, so we've got Councillor Harris's report. I'm just going to go with a show of hands. All in favor of the report request? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. You'll be happy to know, Councillor Harris. All right, Councillor Williamson, you are looking for a report with respect to the costs, the opportunity, and the history surrounding Garden City Arena?
Garden City and Rexheimer's, as it's been converted to, was converted to volleyball use. One of the things that's triggered this is that there's no public skating. At least last I checked, there's no public skating available at Burgoyne Arena, which is to me one of the basic recreational services that we should be providing. So yeah, I think I spoke to it, and if staff has any questions, I could probably provide some more information on it. But I think it's important for the new councillors to have the information on what's happening at this site.
Okay. Councillor Phillips.
Could we have added to that report the possibility or the feasibility of adding public skating on a weekly basis or more to Burgoyne to find out how much it would cost? And we used to have it on a regular basis. We don't have it anymore, and the north end is deprived of public skating, so I think it's something that needs to be investigated.
Having enjoyed the public skating at Burgoyne with my kids, I would like to see if that's possible to continue as well. So I'm assuming Councillor Williamson, no issues with that being added into the report? Excellent. Any other questions or comments with respect to this report request? All right, show of hands, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Councillor Harris, unanimously. Call for notices of motion. No notices of motion have been submitted. Are there any notices of motion for the next meeting, the budget meeting? Seeing none, there's no closed session. There's no motion arising from the closed session. There is an announcement, though. Some important dates and information and preparation for December 12th and the public meeting on the 2023 capital budget. Questions on the capital budget are due by Wednesday, November 30th at 4 p.m. And I have asked staff to send out a reminder around that deadline as we get closer to it. Staff will prepare a written response to those questions and provide that to council on Monday, December the 5th. Proposed amendments to the 2023 capital budget are due by Wednesday, December the 7th at noon. Also, a request that a reminder go out in advance of that to council to make sure everybody's aware of those deadlines. Those amendments will be compiled and information will be provided to council on their impact on Friday, December the 9th. The public meeting for the 2023 capital budget and four-year forecast, including the amendments that are submitted, is on December the 12th. All of this information will be emailed out to council and reminders will be sent. And I will throw in one more final reminder to the community, budget@stcatharines.ca if you have questions, comments, or concerns. Councillor Williamson, you had a question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Back to Bill 23, you said that there's going to be a letter going out from your office. Would it be possible, please, to circulate it before it gets sent to council?
Which letter? Sorry, I think I need to back up.
In regards to the provinces forcing us to get...
Yeah, I'm happy to circulate that in the morning. Yeah, I'm happy to circulate that in the morning. That's not a problem. All right. Any other questions? Nothing? All right. Well, can I get a motion to adjourn? Councillor McPherson, Councillor Phillips, all those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous again. We're adjourned.